Prosecutors reportedly have audio of former President Trump acknowledging that he kept a classified Pentagon document about a potential attack on Iran. Not only would that undermine Trump's claims that he declassified all government documents he kept, but it continues to raise national security concerns. Let's talk about it with our friend Jamil Jaffer, founder and executive director of the National Security Institute at George Mason Law, up live with us at 10:45. Jamil, hi.
Hey, Jim. Great to see you.
Good to see you, too. So this came out last night. There's this document out there. Apparently, the former president's on tape. What does this change, if anything?
Well, look, I think it makes it very hard now for the Justice Department not to come after the president, not to prosecute him. They have him on audio tape admitting he had a classified document. He may have even had that document in his hands. I've not heard the audio, but according to press reports, it appears that he's rustling a document around and referring to that document. So he may have even had this highly classified document, about actual war plans against Iran that he's taken out of the White House and is talking about the people without security clearances at a time when he didn't hold a security clearance. That's obviously hugely problematic.
He has maintained that he could declassify documents just more or less by thinking about it. The process is a little more complex than that. That's been established.
Yeah, Jim, that's ridiculous. There is no precedent for a president declassifying documents just by thinking about it. Now, look, the president had full authority at the time he was president to declassify anything he wanted to, including, it would be crazy to do it, but including sensitive war plans about Iran. The president himself actually took a picture, if you recall, on his iPhone of a highly classified overhead surveillance picture of an Iranian rocket and tweeted that out. That was a declassification. He made a decision. He did it. Typically, you have to tell people you're going to do it. You have to do it in a public way. You have to document it. He didn't do any of those things here. This idea that he just declassified everything about it, wrong, ridiculous, not true. Don't buy it.
Jamil, people who may not know your bona fides, you've worked in the past with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and on many issues pertaining to national security. Can you recall a time clearly when there was so much paid attention to classified documents being mishandled, whether it be the current president, the former president, or any other lawmaker?
I can't. I mean, it's kind of outrageous. You think about President Biden, Vice President Pence, President Trump, all of them taking classified documents out of sensitive, out of the proper environment, handling them inappropriately. It's embarrassing. It's outrageous. The part about Trump, though, I think the hardest part about President Trump is it appears clear that he knew what he was doing when he did it. It appears clear that he knew what he was doing after the fact. They told him they wanted documents back. He refused. He may have moved boxes or had boxes moved. I mean, these are hugely problematic things. You just can't let him get away with it. But, Jim, here's the real problem. This is now a president of the United States who's in office, who's running for re-election. He's got a special prosecutor who's now going to have to likely prosecute a former president who is running for the same office for re-election. This is fraught with political problems, very challenging, not a great situation for the nation to be in, and very problematic from, I think, very difficult from a political point of view.
No, legally, you bring up some points there, but when you look at politically, when we look at some of the polls, I know we don't bring you on to talk about the political side of things, regardless of the allegations, a lot of people continue to support him in his effort to recapture the White House. Jamil, we got to go. Obviously, we could talk about this forever, and I'm sure we will again at some point. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Jim.